Hello! In this video, we're going to take a quick look at how you measure your parts in Onshape to see how big they are and to see how much volume they take up, which is a way to roughly estimate how much 3D printer modeling material it'll take to manufacture them. This is important because for your project on the STEM Explorer, we're going to have to impose some constraints. We're going to have to constrain how much modeling material you can use in your part so we don't go bankrupt printing everybody's parts. And we're also going to need to constrain how big your part can be, because that controls how many parts we can fit in the 3D printer at once, which controls how fast we can print parts, which controls whether or not we actually have time to print everybody's parts out. So this is all really important. And this is another example of Onshape adding features all the time, because what I'm going to show you how to use today is stuff that Onshape has added since I started making these videos. And I'm really glad they added these features because you're going to need them. The things we're going to use are way down here in the lower right-hand corner. We have a little measuring tape icon that says Show Measure Details. That'll be for measuring how big things are. And we have a balance here. It says, a single beam balance that says Display Mass Properties. That'll be for measuring the volume of our part. This one's the easier one to figure out, so I'm going to show you this first. I'll just click on the balance here. And it's asking me for parts to measure in this box here. I only have one of those, so I'm just going to click my part here. This is you might recognize this from our introduction lecture for the water wheel project as our example water wheel. I'm going to click on that. And it says, oh no, my part doesn't have a material defined. That just means I didn't tell Onshape what I'm going to make my water wheel out of. So that means Onshape can't tell me what the mass is, how heavy it is. But what it can tell me is the only number I care about anyway. That's the volume right here. That's how much water it would displace if I made this out of something completely waterproof that water can't soak into and just immersed it in a bucket of water. That's how much water it would displace. And that's really good. It's under 5.5 cubic inches. It's about 5.427-ish. See, there's a lot more numbers. There's probably a lot more numbers than they show in this detail rollover too. But that's fine. The constraint we're going to give you is something like 12 or 14 cubic inches for this part anyway. So we're well under that. I'll click the red X to get out of this. And then click somewhere outside my part to deselect it. Now I'm going to show you the measuring tape so we can see how big this thing is. Show measure details. I'll just click on that. Now it wants me to select entities to measure. And there's a whole lot of things we can select as entities to measure. I'll get into that in a little bit, but for now we can just select one line. That's an entity we can measure. I'll just pick this line right here. And it can tell me right away that that line is 1.5 inches long exactly. And that's already real useful because if I can rotate it here, I forgot to plug my mouse in for this video, so it's a little bit hard. You see, that line also happens to say how thick my wheel is. So that's good. I know it's 1.5 inches thick, which I believe is under the constraint we're going to give you. And if I click somewhere to deselect that, I also want to know what the diameter of my wheel is, but unfortunately, there's a problem with that because I don't have one single line that goes all the way across, because these are all broken up by the central hub and the outer wheel here and this curved part here. That's all a mess, and I can't just measure one line to figure out how big it is. But fortunately, I can measure the distance between two lines, just like you can, when you're setting dimensions, you can set the distance between two things instead of the length of one line. I can measure the distance between two things, so I'll select that line again. Then I'll select its opposite number on the other side here. And now, perfect. I have parallel distance 6 inches. And I happen to know that's exactly right because I modeled it, but I can also hover over that and it shows me that black dotted line. That's exactly the distance it's measuring. So that's perfect. And these other ones would be more important if this wasn't perfectly aligned with the right plane like it is. If I pick, say, this line, or that point there too, that'll work too. I can pick these midpoints and measure the distance between those. Oh, now it zooms for me. Okay. That shows me I still have a minimum distance, which is the same as parallel distance of 6 inches between those points. But it also helpfully tells me that it's a little under 6 inches going, straight parallel to the front plane between those two. And there's a whole 3 inches of distance between those parallel to the right plane. So that's not actually very useful to know, but I did ask Onshape to tell me that, so it told me. So that's interesting. And we can also measure surface area of things. Like if I want to know the surface area of this paddle here, that's a little over 2 1/4 square inches. And I can find the distance between two surfaces too. If I click this one, it shows me that yes, indeed, my paddles are 1/10 of an inch thick, just like I made them. And it can tell me the surface area of a curved surface too. This curved part with the hole in it here is a little more than 1 3/4 of a square inch. And it'll tell me the length of a curved line too, for that matter, for this edge here of the curved part. That's 1.432 inches long. And that's all it can tell me about this one because it's I forget if it's a parabola or some other kind of conic section, but it's a conic section, not a real circle. But if I pick one of these little line segments in here, I'll zoom way in on this, it can tell me that is 6.33 blah 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 inches long, but it also tells me that it has a radius of 1.4 inches. And that's really useful because I can't select this whole circle again because it's all divided up into little individual circle pieces. So that's actually really handy. I can find out what the radius or diameter of that circle is. 1.4 would be 2.8 inches of diameter. And I can also find out, useless things like this whole surface area here is almost 5 square inches. I'm not sure why you'd want to know that, but maybe you might want to know that, and you can find it out if you do. There's all sorts of weird things you can measure with this if you want. So I hope all that helps you keep your part within the proper constraints. Thanks for watching.